Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Paul, I'm with the Dicey Review, and tonight we're going to be looking at the 2 to 8 player game Whoosh Bounty Hunters, released by Stronghold Games and Artipia Games. Whoosh Bounty Hunters comes with all of the components that you see here, including 36 monster cards and 108 weapon and spell cards. The weapon and spell cards are separated into regular weapons and spells, showing 1 symbol, combo weapons and spells, showing 2 symbols, failed attack cards, showing broken weapons or spells, and 3 wizard staff cards, which are wild. To begin setup, first remove any cards that won't be used based on the player count. In our example, we're going to be setting up for a 3-player game. In a 3-player game, players will first remove any cards that say 5+, but will leave any cards that say 3+. After removing the correct cards and shuffling all of the monster cards together, players will then create 3 face-down piles of equal size in the center of the table. After doing this, they'll reveal the top card of each pile, placing them close together. After you're done, it should look like this. The players will shuffle all of the weapon and spell cards together and then split them in as many piles as there are players. Try to keep each pile roughly the same size. They don't have to be exactly equal, but close is best. Then give each player one of these piles and have them place it face down in front of them. The youngest player will go first. On a player's turn, they will reveal the top card of their weapons and spells pile. After doing this, it will now be the next player's turn. The next player in turn order will reveal the top card from their weapon and spells pile. Play will continue in this way until all of the face-up symbols match one of the monster cards in play. If at any point all of the revealed symbols by all players match the symbols that are on any of the face-up monster cards, a player may immediately and as quickly as possible place their hand on top of the monster to claim that monster. It doesn't matter if it's your turn or if you revealed the card that matched the face-up symbol. The first player to place their hand on that monster will claim the monster for scoring. When a player successfully claims a monster and all of the symbols required are in play, they will get to take the monster from the play area and place it face up in their area for scoring at the end of the game. It's important to note, however, that if a player places their hand on a face-up monster and not all of the symbols required are in play, the player is instead forced to take this card and place it in their play area face down. This card will score negative points for them at the end of the game. After a monster is removed from the play area, whether successfully or by mistake, the player who took that card will then reveal a new monster card to take its place. After that, all of the cards that were played face up in the player's play area will be placed on the bottom of their spell and weapons deck. After replacing the monster and placing all played spell and weapon cards back on the bottom of their decks, the player who revealed the new monster will then begin the new round by playing a card from the top of their deck again. If after a card is revealed, 2 or more players try to capture different monsters at the same time, only the first player to do so will count. If it's too close to call, players can determine this using a different method. Players can look at the numbers on the bottom left of the cards. The player who touched the card with the highest number is the one that scores. It's important to note that it doesn't matter if the player has scored this card successfully. So for instance, if the player who touched the higher card scored the card incorrectly, they would still be forced to take it as negative points. If 2 or more players try and capture the same monster, only the player who got there first counts. This is usually the player whose hand is on the bottom. If it can't be determined whose hand is on the bottom, then the card is scored by the player who has the most of their hand on the card. The game is over when the last monster from any pile is taken by a player. Players will then add up all of the points on any of their face-up monsters in their score pile. Players will have to subtract 1 point for each face-down monster. The player who has the most points wins. And if there's a tie, the player with the most 5-point monsters is the winner. If there's still a tie there, you can count who has the most 4-point monsters, and if they're still tied, you can count the 3-point monsters, and so on. If there's a very rare case where all of the players have captured the exact same types of monsters, the victory is shared. It's important to note that while playing the game, players have to use the same hand that they use to reveal cards to capture monsters. The rulebook recommends holding the deck in one hand to make sure that you don't accidentally break this rule. So for instance, after placing a card down with this hand, you could then use the same hand to claim a monster. It's also important to note that while waiting for other players to reveal their cards, a player must always have their hand behind the area that they use to reveal their own cards. Finally, we want to highlight 3 special cards that may be confusing to players when they first see them. The first card is a failed attack or spell card. These cards will have X's in the 4 corners, and these cards will not count as the weapon or spell that they show. They're simply there to confuse players. The next card is a combo card. Combo cards will have 2 different symbols on them, and it's important to note that these cards count as both of these symbols when attacking. The final card is a wizard's staff card. These cards are wild, and they can count as any weapon or spell. Alright everybody, that was our video. Thanks so much for watching. We hope that it was helpful and we hope that it was informative. If you still have any questions about how to play the game, please comment below or email us directly at thedicey@gmail.com. If you want to hear more from the Dicey Review, you can listen to the Dicey Review podcast. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, TuneIn, and pretty much any podcast app. If you want to read our written reviews, you can visit thediceyreview.com and make sure to connect with us on social media or by visiting our Board Game Geek Guild. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.